So yeah, you know who it is. For those of you that don't, I am Cytonius, the opposite of the phoniest. I'm not going to yell it. And today I have a very, 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 very special guest, a well-respected writer, good friend of mine, and a man who has, in my opinion, single-handedly helped to rejuvenate the series, interest in the series WMAC Masters. Author of the book Quest for the Dragon Star, Mr. Kris Landis.
There were entirely too many varies and entirely too many usages of single-handedly in that intro, but thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Single-handedly doesn't sit well with me because a lot of people kept the flag flying kind of in the interim before the book came out, and you were one of them. Our mutual friends, Mel and Smooth, were another one of them. Demetrius Angelo from the Urban Action Showcase. So, you guys were kind of keeping the flag flying until the stars kind of aligned for me to do the book. So while I appreciate the props, not single-handedly is a bit much in my worldview, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Wait, the reason I'm mentioning you as single-handedly, okay, yeah, it's definitely a community, but what you managed to do is really answer questions that a lot of the fan base had, that not even guys like Demetrius Angelo or Mel and Smooth, or even me, could really get to the core of. And for that, I really want to thank you for that, because so many people, which is weird for me to say what I'm about to say, so many people reach out to me about you, and I don't know if you know that. Like when I did the WMAC video, first of all, I didn't expect that video to really do anything. Like when I made that video because I was mad that another video I made didn't get any numbers. I made a video about a show called Ronin Warriors.
I love that show.
Yeah, and I made a video about that, and I was like, why ain't nobody watching this? And then I was like, I'm gonna talk about WMAC Masters because I didn't really see anybody else talking about it. And I went down I went down a lot of rabbit holes because like I'm a big martial arts fan. Like I'm quite sure you know that. And I'm a martial artist too. And WMAC kind of came into my life as I was really, really getting into the martial arts. But what you managed to do is more or less give people insight to what a third season would have been like. And that to me, the research and the effort that you put into your book is so amazing. And I will forever, ever, forever be grateful for you and for the work that you put into the book. So I apologize. I apologize if you've answered this question before in other outlets, but what really led you to want to write a book about WMAC Masters?
Sure. So it was kind of the stars aligning, and what started off was really kind of crummy ways. I did a murder mystery novel, signed with a brand new startup publisher, signed a contract, had a lawyer look over the contract before I sign it, and all that kind of stuff. And the book comes out, it's doing really well. It's like the bestseller on this new imprint. And when it came time to pay, no money's coming. Another author on the imprint kind of messages me on Twitter and goes, "Hey, have you been paid yet?" I'm like, no. Turns out none of the authors, none of the staff have been paid. This guy was just a scale artist, basically. So I went through getting the rights to the book back, and I can republish it, but I wasn't ready to do that because I had spent like 3 years writing and then editing and then querying. And then finally it gets signed and it comes out and it's this big, my first novel, like, it's a special thing. And then all of a sudden it goes about as south as it can go. And I end up losing over $1,000 to make sure I get the rights back as opposed to ever making any money on it. So I'm sitting there. I have a son who's 6 months old, pandemic. This is in the lockdown era of the pandemic. And I'm like, I'm a writer, stay-at-home dad. Gotta be doing something. I can't just sit here and feel sorry for myself. I'm not emotionally ready to do the novel thing again because it's 3 to 5 years of your life before anything good can happen, and bad things happened last time. And so I'm flipping YouTube, just, with my son. We have Apple TV, flipping YouTube on the TV. And, like most people, when you're down, kind of feeling down, you go to nostalgia, what you liked as a kid. And I, for some reason, picked WMAC Masters that day. And lo and behold, it was all on the internet. Thank you, WMAC Masters Archive. Whoever you are, if you're out there listening to this, please contact me so I can thank you. Still never found who that is. God bless them, because they make it available for all of us. But watch the whole show, and it ends on that cliffhanger. And it's never sat right with me. And I'm sitting here going, I've got a professional website that looks really good because my wife is a graphic designer. I've got a novel that's come out. I've covered the Columbus Crew soccer team professionally. I've got writing clips. I look just legitimate enough that maybe some people might want to talk to me. Like, I'm nobody. I'm not legitimate at all, but I look legitimate enough. And so I do some Googles and some Google Fu, the only martial art I know, and I get some email addresses because a lot of these guys and gals still have martial arts schools. And I start sending off just cold emails like, hey, I'm a writer out of Columbus, Ohio. I want to do something on WMAC Masters. At the time, I have no idea it's going to be a book. I think maybe it'll be a blog. Maybe I can set up a Medium and maybe get a couple bucks. Maybe if I get really lucky, I can do a series and, get a little bit of a niche for myself. And I remember I walked downstairs to my wife's office. We were in a different house at the time, but I walked downstairs, the baby's asleep, and I go, I think I did a thing. I might have just blacked out and started a new project. And she's like, what? But the first person to answer was Chris Casamassa, who is about as big of a star as you could ask for. And he's like, yeah, man, whatever you need, jump in my calendar. Let's do this. And if he hadn't been an overwhelming yes, I wouldn't have had the confidence to go through and keep kind of pushing on. But because he said yes, he gave me that legitimacy in the eyes of other people. And from there, every person was like, oh, let me put you in touch with Johnny. Let me put you in touch with her. And it kind of built from there. And, at the time, I didn't realize it was going to be a book until about a month in. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I've got to find out what season 3 was going to be. That was like the holy grail. Like, this is the point of what I'm doing. Like, wanting to preserve the stories wasn't as important on my mind yet. As I kind of went on, it became very much I wanted to preserve the spirit of the show and the stories because everyone felt so passionately about it. But at the time when I was first starting off, I was in full fanboy, I just need to know what was going to happen mode. And so it kind of was an evolution as it went on.
Oh, wow. So I've read your book. I bought several copies of your book for many people. And
you bought more copies of it than literally anyone else, including my family. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big supporter of everything that you do. I follow your Twitter. I follow the Facebook page, and I'm definitely like, Kris Landis. I'm always, putting you out there and trying to get your content, your book seen. I'm so used to saying content because of like social media. Right. But what you do is actual content. You're an author. You're not like somebody that's just making like, YouTube podcasts. Like
it's 2024, man. It is all equally valid. I don't like TikTok because it means writers like me have to be able to like dance and be funny to sell books. But besides that, I'm all in favor of diversifying the digital portfolio. I don't think books are more important or more valid than any other form. So thank you, but it's all content, right?
That's true. That's very true. I want to ask, what age did you discover WMAC? Because I think there's an age difference between us. I'm 43, and I discovered the show when I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
So like, how old were you when you discovered WMAC Masters?
I saw it during the first season in 1995, so I would have been 6 turning 7 that year. So I was literally the target demographic of, the 6 to 8 to 10-year-olds. Like, I was who they were marketing to. I loved Power Rangers. I loved the WWF. I was who they were trying to sell to, and boy, did it land. So I remember watching the original run of it, and I remember. And I think I talk about this in the introduction to the book. I didn't get to see how it ended at first because it was on the WB station in Columbus instead of on Fox. And for whatever reason, my house no longer got the WB station halfway through season 2. So like the last 3 episodes of season 2, I didn't get to see. And I distinctly remember it was like second, third grade, and the lunch table, like grilling my buddy Aaron, like, what happened? You got to tell me. Who was it? And he was like, tsunami. I'm like, obviously I don't swear at the time. The fuck you mean tsunami? You know, I'm a kid. I'm not swearing yet, but I'm like, no. Who took the draft? So I distinctly remember not getting to see it until years later how it actually ended because I didn't have access to the network.
So with WMAC being a martial arts themed show, and I feel like you might have mentioned this before, but I just want to ask so that like people who are watching this and getting to know you for the first time, do you have a background in martial arts, or did you ever make an attempt?
Yes, I did make an attempt inspired by the show. I took a year of Taekwondo. I'm a type 1 diabetic with a very overprotective mother. And I had one blood sugar incident at Taekwondo one time, and I was never allowed to go back, even though the incident was handled perfectly well. I was never allowed to go back. I took a year or so of Taekwondo here in Columbus. And I did Taekwondo because Olympus was my favorite at the time. So I picked Taekwondo, and I found out later that Olympus had trained for a little bit with the guy who started the school here in Columbus, Master Choi. So that was a small world sort of moment for me.
Wow. What's interesting is I have a background in Taekwondo as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't start martial arts because of WMAC. I started it more because of the Ninja Turtles, and that's where I guess the age gap comes in. Like I was born in '81, so I started studying martial arts in 1991. I started in a style called Nippon Kempo. I did that for like a year or two, and then I transitioned into Taekwondo and then other arts after that. But with WMAC, I'm going to be 100% honest. WMAC came to me at a point in my life where martial arts really, really started to resonate because I was a fan of Power Rangers, of course. You know, I love Kimberly, the Pink Ranger. I love Tommy, who, you know, also is from the Chris Casamassa, Luke Casamassa lineage of karateka or karate men. And what really resonated for me with WMAC, and I know you wanted to talk about this part of it, was the amount of representation on the series. And at that age, at me being 13, 14, or 15, or whenever the show came out when I was a kid, I didn't have a real strong concept of representation. You know what I mean? Especially when it came to seeing like, you know, Black martial artists. And I believe Herb Perez is of Mexican descent. Yes. And then Jamie Webster, who, because of you, I was able to have dinner with him and his family.
How cool was that? That was like the coolest experience ever.
That was the coolest.
I still can't believe that happened.
We're going to talk about some of the things that you made possible for a lot of us, like people that are into the series. But and I apologize if I'm rambling on, but
no, you're good.
Diversity at this age is a very important thing to me, and representation. And martial arts, in my mind, is very much a vessel for multiculturalism. And I actually think that WMAC Masters did a much better job of presenting multiculturalism within the framework of martial arts than a show like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I want to talk to you about that, about what representation means to you, and how the series, when in your journey in writing the book, whether or not that played a part in it, and just your overall thoughts on what I'm talking about.
So as a kid, obviously, white kid, in a lower middle class, but not hard living. Like I had no concept of it. I had Black friends, I had Mexican friends, I had Asian friends. Like in the early 90s, that's not a thing that they're teaching you. We're not talking about it. It was just, it's cool. As an adult, and specifically through the process of writing the book, it became so overwhelming almost how ahead of the time it was and how intentional it was about that. I spoke with the creators of the show, Carlin West, Norman Grossfeld, Kathy, and just everyone involved in casting the show. And that was primarily Carlin and then later on Norman. They were very intentional about representation, but they were intentional about it in a very authentic way. It wasn't, well, we have to make sure we get a black guy in there. We have to make sure we get this many Asian guys. It was, they wanted a diversity in race, in gender, and in martial arts styles. They over and over, different people told me different variations of the idea that martial arts is for everyone, and that's what we wanted to show kids. Because this was a show that was aimed at kids, make no mistake about that. Like, we love it as adults, but this was 100%, they were trying to get to kids to sell toys, but they were trying to use that to spread a message, pardon me. It's been a long week. I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. Bear with me, folks.
You're doing great. Yeah.
But they were very intentional about it, and started stemming from who they cast, because they had the whole NASCA circuit available to them. They had the best of the Hollywood stunt crews available to them, and they were very selective. And Pat Johnson was a big part of casting this as well. Rest in peace, Mr. Johnson. But what really struck me after the book came out, in doing some of these events and meeting people in real life and online, the African American nerd community, for lack of a better term, the martial arts fans, the nerd fandoms, and I say that with all love because I am a huge nerd myself. The show resonated with them on what feels like to me from the outside, as the guy who wrote the book, it feels like it stuck with them and resonated with them on a deeper level than it did people like me, for lack of a better phrase. You know, every time I've been recognized wearing a WMAC shirt or WMAC jacket, it's been by a black person. And I think from the outside, the only thing I can think of is because it was the first time seeing martial artists who look like them, you know. And I wanted your take on that, because that's kind of the space you operate in, the kind of martial arts action intersection with kind of pop culture. But to me, it's just been so cool to see how deeply connected people are with it in ways that maybe I can't be, because as much as it was a show I loved, obviously, because I wrote a book about it, it wasn't a foundational, that's the first time I saw myself doing something moment, because you had Power Rangers, you had WWF, you had all this other stuff. So I found that really, really moving.
As do I. And so what I'll say about what you're talking about with diversity in martial arts, there's always been Black and Asian intersectionality. And I really want to make sure that is understood, like from somebody like me who really digs deep into this. Black and Asian intersectionality goes as far back as like, and this is just me being like a martial arts nerd. Like 100 years ago, there was a Japanese nationalist group called the Kokurukai. The Kokurukai, or the Black Dragon Clan, they were like right-wing martial artists that were trying to like promote Japanese nationalism. Now, my opinion on that part of it from a political perspective, I'm not going into that because I'm not, whatever. But
it's a different show.
Yeah, that's a different show. But in the 50s, a lot of people don't know this, the Kokurukai was actually under FBI surveillance alongside the Nation of Islam, because there was some intersectionality between members of the Kokurukai and the Nation of Islam, because the Nation of Islam has a large foundational framework, I guess, whatever you want to call it, with martial arts, because of a man named Siho Steve Muhammad, who was the founder of the Black Karate Federation. And he was a member of what's known as the Fruit of Islam. And he taught many members of the Nation of Islam traditional karate. And Steve Muhammad is from the era where Chuck Norris was from, and Bruce Lee and all of those guys. He came up in that era. But there was also guys like Moses Powell, who was one of the first Black martial artists in the United States of America to develop a hybrid street fighting system. Synosis Vijutsu, I'm pronouncing that horribly. Moses Powell developed that system based on principles from like Filipino martial arts, karate, boxing, and things like that. And his style predates Jeet Kune Do by like 6 or 7 years. And these are people that really are really the foundation of that intersectionality between the Black and Asian martial arts experience. And then years later, you get people like Jim Kelly and Carl Scott, and years later, you get Wesley Snipes, Ty Mock, who was a cast member on the show, and we could talk about him.
Am I allowed to talk about him yet? Has enough time passed? We'll see.
Well, I have an interesting story about Ty Mock. It's not very in depth. So one of my best friends was a bouncer at nightclubs in the like mid 2000s, and one of his like partners that he was a bouncer with was a gentleman named Gary Peebles. Gary Peebles is actually the stuntman for Dave Bautista in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put nobody's business out there, but that particular individual just told me some very interesting things about his interaction with individuals within certain spaces. Yeah. And I'm not going to elaborate on whether it was negative or positive, but like we could talk about that off camera because I know you have some stories as well. But to go back to the Black intersectionality part of it, you get Steve Muhammad, Moses Powell, Carl Scott, Jim Kelly, etc., Michael Jai White, Wesley Snipes, etc. That intersectionality has always been there. It's always been there, especially with somebody like Bruce Lee, who's very much an avatar for racial progress and diversity, right? But then you look at a show like WMAC Masters, who has his daughter, Shannon Lee, who is like, the second generation of that. And then you have martial artists like Hakeem the Machine Austin, who for a lot of people of my generation and also your generation who are Black, who might not even be Black, he was the template of masculinity. He was this very like tall, built, capable guy. And he was suave. You know what I mean? Like he was, to me, and I mentioned this in the WMAC retrospective I did, he was really the breakout star of that show. And, everybody has their favorite WMAC Master cast member, but I know that when we met him at the Capital City Classics, the minute he walked into that tournament, people lost their minds.
Yeah.
They lost their minds because the thing about martial arts, and I say this as somebody being a Black kid that was introduced to martial arts at a very young age, my introduction to martial arts wasn't necessarily Black martial artists. Yeah. It was the Ninja Turtles. And then the Ninja Turtles represent a different type of intersectionality where it's LA surfer culture mixed with Asian culture. Yeah. And that's something that's very separate from the Black community. But when you look at things like The Last Dragon with Ty Mock, and then you look at WMAC Masters, which comes like a full 10 years later, actually. I don't know if people peep that. They're like, there's a 10-year gap between WMAC and The Last Dragon. And you have somebody like Hakeem the Machine Austin and Willie the Bam Johnson and Eric Betts and these very strong, Black, potent men in the 90s during the rise of like hip hop culture becoming mainstream, which really means that Black culture is becoming mainstream. Though that's something that resonates very much for like a specific group of people who are very underrepresented. And I apologize if I'm ranting on.
No.
That show, one of the things that really, really makes that show mean a lot to me is somebody like Hakeem the Machine Austin, because for me, that was my template. You know what I mean? Because I discovered Hakeem Austin around the same time I discovered who Michael Jai White was, like in 94, 96, 94, 95, 96. And those guys, those gentlemen, they represented what I wanted to be. Like, I'm not into basketball. I didn't want to be like Michael Jordan. I've never seen him play basketball. Yeah. I didn't want to be like Emmitt Smith or whoever the big quarterback was. And even in the WWF, I was a big wrestling fan growing up. I don't know if you know that about me. I was a huge wrestling fan. There were no Black wrestlers that really stood out to me in the 90s. I mean, The Rock came later, but to be honest, The Rock didn't really identify as Black. You know what I mean? In the way that, you feel what I'm saying? So, like with the diversity of that show and the diversity not being, the diversity being far more authentic than we've seen representation for multiculturalism and racial diversity being done in the past, present, and possibly in the future. I really feel like enough people don't talk about WMAC Masters in that capacity. Yeah. Like most people just talk about it like, oh, it's karate and oh, that old obscure show. But I'm like, if you really pay close attention to what that show embodies, people complaining about lack of representation You have a whole 2-season show right there where
Yeah.
there were so many capable Black people and Asian people and people of Latino descent and people of Native American descent,
Yeah.
white people who were, very skillful martial artists. You know what I mean? Like there was so much. And even Mike Chatteratnabut, who I believe he's either Thai or Cambodian. He's not like.
I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm just so grateful he started going by Mike Chat because I can never pronounce his full last name. You spoke about Michael Jai White, and for people who haven't read the book who might be listening to this, there's a Michael Jai White connection to WMAC Masters, which I'm hoping to get to meet him this winter and actually get to ask him about this. But the very first test footage for what was called Martial Masters at the time was shot in Universal Studios, California, not Florida, where they ended up shooting the show. And it was Darren McBee from American Gladiators, played a character called Jaguar. And they did a test fight at the Waterworld with him and Michael Jai White. They were the first 2 people to ever do footage for WMAC Masters. None of it ended up making the show. Obviously, the footage doesn't exist anymore. There were no, it was just tests, for the concept, basically. But I am hoping to get 5 minutes with Michael Jai White when he does a comic convention here in town this winter to see if he even remembers. I know some of his entourage are still close with Master Bam, so I'm hoping I might be able to weasel my way in there. But yeah, to your point about the representation, the people involved with making the show were very aware of the chance they had and the responsibility they had. And that was something that they emphasized to me over and over, that they wanted to make sure they were doing everything they could to portray things in an authentic way. They didn't want it to be, well, we got to make sure a Black guy gets the title, and that's why you didn't see some of the gimmickiness of, like in the WWF in the 90s, one of the Black wrestlers was Saba Simba. He wore like jungle attire. Super questionable, but
Or
in the
Papa
90s,
Shango.
Yeah, Papa Shango, right, exactly. You didn't see any of that. You saw the Machine. You saw Panther, which I guess you could maybe say lead a certain direction, but, even that, I do wish they had Lynette Love for more screen time, but unfortunately she just didn't work out. But she was an Olympic gold medalist in Taekwondo. She was a badass. And it just unfortunately didn't work out with her. But so they were very aware of not only the opportunity they had to kind of break some of those glass ceilings, but the responsibility they had. It was always near the top of their mind.
Yeah, definitely. And Lynette Love. So I want to say something about Panther too. Like I feel like I read it might have been in your book that like he was drawing inspiration from T'Challa. He's one of the first. He was one of the first people in like I guess mainstream television to really display T'Challa, a T'Challa type character in live action. Because somebody reached out to me and they were like, "Why is Panther acting this that?" I'm like, because he's the Black Panther. Like he's literally because like Eric Betts is the comic book head. Like he did stunt work on the Spider-Man movies. He's done so much actually. He worked on Batman Begins. He helped train Christian Bale.
Ah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was one. One day I'm gonna do like a video retrospective on like Batman Begins and talk about some of that, but not anytime soon. But Eric Betts was also one of my favorites because he was yoked up. Honestly, he was Zach from Power Rangers on steroids in a lot of ways. Maybe not with like the growling and whatnot, but just the acrobatics and just the flavor and just the energy. Even though I believe he auditioned, he was the original choice for Zach the Black Ranger, I believe.
Really?
Yes, because he was him and Walter Jones. That they was cool. They was in a little boy group.
Eric did stunt work for MMPR, so
Yeah, supposedly Eric Betts was like he didn't want to play this stereotypical character.
Yeah.
And then do like hip hop keto and sell out, make Black people look a certain way. So he passed the baton to Walter Emmanuel Jones, and supposedly that's how Walter Emmanuel Jones got the role. Like he wasn't the initial choice. The original person supposedly, this is theoretical because I feel like Eric Betts discussed this in a podcast a couple years ago. But yeah, the original choice for Zach the Black Ranger was supposed to be Eric Betts. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
even
wild.
other interesting stuff about Eric Betts too is his son. I think he's grooming his son to be a stuntman, and you see that with Bam too. Willie the Bam Johnson, his kids work in the industry. His daughter works in. She was in one of the Star Wars shows. She was
Yeah,
like
she
a stunt
was.
double.
Yeah.
And his son Marco, he just did a movie with Robert Samuels, who was actually one of the first to go back to the whole Black and Asian intersectionality. Robert Samuels was I think he's the first modern Black stuntman to work with Sammo Hung.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he recently did a movie. I can't remember the name of the movie. It's like something Fist. It was nominated for a couple of action awards, but yeah, Marco Johnson, he's done stuff in the industry as well. So that's another thing that WMAC Masters doesn't really get credit for is creating the next generation of stuntmen. Because most of those actors' kids, they work in the industry or they're martial arts adjacent in the film industry, or they do stuff like Jamie Webster's son.
Yeah.
He's a big jujitsu guy. He travels all over. Well, he's also a hip hop head. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's a real nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So WMAC Masters is probably one of the most influential kids television shows of the 90s that people don't discuss as that. And that is something that's really upsetting to me. You know what I mean? Because I feel like why is this show treated like a fever dream? It was one of the top rated shows on Fox Kids or for kids.
Yeah, I mean it almost came a little too soon. I think if it had come 4 or 5 years later, we'd be having some very different conversations. And unfortunately, Bandai, the financiers and the guys who made the toy line, they screwed them. That's really what it boils down to is basically Bandai signed on to finance the show as a vehicle to sell toys. Like when I talk about everybody was really my son going crazy in the background. Sorry. When I talk about everybody was really all about the message and wanting to spread martial arts, that's the cast, that's the producers. The money people, the finance side, Bandai, they wanted to sell toys. End of story. They wanted to merch everything, and basically a couple different conspiracy theories, for lack of a better word, were told to me by different people involved with the show. But the popular opinion of people who were there at the time is that WMAC Masters was doing really well, and it was starting to cut into Power Rangers profitability. I have zero way to check that, fact check that, but Bandai basically slashed the funding for season 2. Like, if you notice in season 2, they start reusing more footage. The on location shots are done away with. They're not going out and doing the flashback sequences, and that's all budget cuts because Bandai pretty much hamstrung them. And ultimately, that's why they didn't get season 3, was because Bandai were like, we're not going to finance it. You can make the show with what you've got. And they're like, we can't do it to the standard we want. But basically, that's why it only lasted 2 seasons. That's why people don't remember it, because Bandai, when they realized it was cutting into the golden goose, all those t-shirts they were going to make, those never came out. All the martial arts schools. The martial arts schools were a big part of the plan, and they were going to do WMAC the World Martial Arts Council affiliated schools. They were going to go to the martial arts school owners and say, you pay us this much, you can license yourself as a WMAC school, we'll send the cast around to do workshops twice a year, different people, and it's a win-win for everybody. You get featured on the show, and apparently a lot of the martial arts schools, the guys running it were just too old school. They didn't see the upside, so that never happened. So it was just like a perfect storm of the financiers slashing funding, and people not seeing the potential in this new way of doing things. I think if you are doing this in a 1999, 2000, post the Matrix era, post Enter Jet Li. What was Jet Li's big one?
Romeo Must Die.
Romeo Must Die. Thank you. Like, if you're doing WMAC Masters in that era, I think it leaves a much bigger cultural footprint because the people involved in different parts of the industry that maybe you would need to have a little more mainstream success would have been more acclimated and more willing to take that risk, because at the time this was pretty out there for a kid's show. So I think it's just an unfortunate casualty of the timing. But if you do it in 99, 2000, you have a whole different cast, and who's to say it would be nearly as good,
That's a very, very, very good point. And to go back to some, I haven't watched the retrospective I did in a minute, but I remember when I was writing it, one thing that really stuck out to me was where martial arts was in 1995 when the show came out.
Yeah.
And it was really before the UFC popped off, but it was before Jackie Chan and Jet Li popped off.
Yeah.
But it was right at the midpoint where things like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers were starting to head towards a decline.
Yeah.
So when you were mentioning that WMAC was cutting into the Power Rangers popularity, I remember at that point in time liking WMAC more than Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Because the first two seasons were like Mighty Morphin, then they transitioned into Zeo, and then when Zeo was like 95, 96, and then it was Turbo after that. By the midpoint of Zeo, I was done. I was done with Power Rangers, and I didn't watch it again for like 10, 15 years. And WMAC Masters held my attention because I didn't see anything like that, because I didn't discover Hong Kong cinema at that point. So my reference point from martial arts media was like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bruce Lee movies. You know what I mean? And that's like very, not just called Bruce Lee entry level, but it is, because when you look at some of the choreography of WMAC Masters, it's very advanced.
Yeah.
I feel like that is another thing that people don't discuss. I remember watching a fight between, it might have been Larry Lamb and Mike Chat. I think it was a fight they had. And I'm a big fan of kickers. And I was just looking at like the sheer technique and precision of those two guys. And I'm just like, this is mind-blowing shit. Like, this is mind-blowing. Like,
the only time they fought was that aborted Battle Dome fight. Could you be thinking of him and Larry and Carmichael?
That's what I'm thinking about. Carmichael Simon. Yeah.
So I have a story about that fight, which is the only reason I correct you.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Carmichael, I asked him his favorite fight. Carmichael, one of the most helpful people in this whole thing. He gave me so much time. He was a mentor. Him and Master Bam were like out of this world level mentors. But
I love Bam. Yeah.
Carmichael, actually, we were doing a Skype call like this, and he shared his screen and pulled up the YouTube video of that fight and gave me like behind the scenes commentary on that fight as they were doing it. They called it the fastest fight on the show because they packed so much into that fight. And Yuji Noguchi, Cyclone, directed the choreography for that fight. So not only do you have two great kickers in the fight, you've got another amazing kicker choreographing it. So that fight is one of my favorites, just because I got like the behind the scenes like walkthrough of it. He's like, yeah, we did like 3 takes of this when he did this, and I'm like, this is unbelievable that I'm having this conversation.
I would actually say to this day, like, there's not a lot of fight choreography in American like cinema television that can compare with WMAC Masters, and I'm just like, it's mind blowing how many people just either, once again, fever dream TV show or never heard of it before, but love like UFC and love like karate movies and martial arts movies and things like that. Well, they were doing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just to your point, look who was doing the fight choreography. Pat Johnson for part of season 1, the guy, like for karate, like the American style of doing it, for lack of a better term. Then Isaac Florentine, who is a legend in his own right. And then for season 2, they bring in Yuji Noguchi, who would later go on to be the guy for the whole Power Rangers franchise for 20 freaking years. So it Carmichael really put over just how ahead of the curve the choreography was. And for someone like me who's not a martial arts film guy, not an action film guy, that's something that wouldn't have even dawned on me. It's like, oh, those fights are awesome. And obviously I know they've got to be choreographed, but the idea that they were doing it 5 years before everybody else was, and they were doing it on such a small budget on the Universal Studios backlots, like it's really crazy. Yeah, it's wild.
It's very, very wild. And like I said, for a martial arts nerd like me, to see guys like Larry Lamb who would go on to do, well, actually, Larry Lamb and Ho Sung did Ninja Turtles before WMAC, but the choreography in Ninja Turtles, Secret of the Ooze, and Ninja Turtles 3, it does not compare to what they were doing in WMAC Masters at all.
How could it with those rubber suits they have to wear?
I mean, well, the first movie had really good fight scenes, but even that doesn't really compare to like the fights in WMAC Masters, like the fights between Ho Sung and Akeem Austin. There was a fight between Akeem Austin and Great Wolf that was really good.
Yes.
The fight between I think that was in the first episode. The fight,
that was Jamie's first day.
Yeah, Jamie Webster is an incredible martial artist, like incredible. He was one of my favorites as well. Like he was just so dynamic with his movement. So a lot of those guys were. The only thing I will say that's a criticism about WMAC Masters, and it's not a criticism, it's just a thing that I wish would have got more amped up. I wish there would have been more fights with Willie the Bam Johnson, because he is such a dynamic martial artist as well, and such a pool of knowledge. Like, because of you, I got to talk to Willie the Bam Johnson on the phone like once a week for like 3 months. Because we were planning to do, he wanted me to do a video for one of his movies, 1 out of 100, and then my computer died, and then there was no Cytonius, the opposite of the phonius, for a little while. And but just talking to him, that man is such a gem of a human being. I don't know if he's gonna watch this, but I just want to like give a special shout out to him, because you had mentioned before that he had like kind of mentored you through the process of writing the book and learning about things about the series. And just in the 3 months that I got to talk to him, he mentored me, and he taught me so much about just masculinity and what it means to be like a man, and just what the history of he taught me a lot about martial arts history just talking to him once a week for 3 months. So once again, WMAC Masters affecting lives in a positive way. Like,
shout out, you mentioned 1 out of 100, now on Tubi. Now on the streaming service Tubi as of like yesterday. So everybody check that out. How about Master Bam? But yeah, the show really, it was so ahead of its time in a number of ways that I think people who kind of look at the surface level comparisons to Mortal Kombat and stuff like that, they see, oh, Mortal Kombat for kids. And like, well, yeah, that's not wrong. It's just, it was so much more than that, you know? And that's really something that I tried to emphasize in the book and empathize with, because you can see all the connections to Power Rangers, to Mortal Kombat, to pro wrestling. It has links and connections to all those, but it is so much more than the sum of its parts, you know? And I heard someone say, yeah, this was just a way to try to get the stunt actors from Power Rangers some screen time. It wasn't that great. I'm like, oh, am I allowed to swear on this show? How much can I swear here?
You can say whatever you want.
The fuck you talking about? You go tell Richard Brandon, rest in peace, that he was just a background stunt actor. Richard Brandon, one of the just most talented dudes in the history of history. Like the chapter in the book about the episode they did on him, I kind of turned into just a little tribute to him, because I never got to talk to him, so I just kind of laid out I asked everybody for their favorite Richard Brandon story, and that became my favorite chapter in the whole book, because I don't think I could have told any story better than the one they told. He was just such a great guy, and I got to speak to his second wife shortly before the book went live, and she was just she was so sweet, and I hope she liked the book. She's still my Facebook friend, so I'm gonna assume she liked it. But yeah, just the idea that WMAC Masters was somehow a vehicle for cast-offs or something like that was just ridiculous to me.
Yes. So, the Richard Brandon chapter of your book, that's one of my favorites too. There's a lot of chapters in the book that's one of my favorites. I like when you discuss. I haven't read the book in about a month or so bear with me. But I feel like there was a portion of the book where you talked about the potential for what would be done in the third season.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a WMAC Masters movie.
Yeah, spoilers. Spoilers. I usually don't talk about this because like you got to buy the book to hear about this, but because it's you and you bought like 100 copies of the book, I will do it. So yeah, Norman. In our second interview, I got to do a couple interviews with him. The first one, we kind of did how the show came to be and the pilot that never aired and stuff like that. And then in the second one, we did kind of the second season and then what was going to come after. And he laid it out to me that one of the things on the table when they realized season 3 wasn't going to be doable as a season. The original plan was always to just keep going for seasons, to try to get into syndication after 100 episodes, because that's where your money is. But when they realized that wasn't feasible, they started tossing around ideas to kind of do this big series ending movie to where they would give it this kind of rise and fall, like, an action movie to kind of try to draw all those characters and storylines together. And he didn't have a plot. He didn't have, it never got far enough to where he could give me details on anything. But he did say that Jukido would have a big bad, like a boss character above Larry and Tracer. And that to me was like the most fun to think about, because you're talking 96, 97, 98. The whole smorgasbord of action movie martial arts stars are available to you at that time. That who could play that? You could go crazy and have it be like Steven Seagal or something, like right, like, because to me, Jukido always should have been a white guy. Like a white guy trying to dominate martial arts just felt on point for kind of the message of it belongs to everybody. It felt to me like it should be some white guy trying to be like, no, this belongs to me, damn it, So that was really, really fun for me. And getting, like, I saved the video of the Zoom call. I haven't watched it in a long time, but he tells me what was supposed to happen, and I don't know what to say. I've got like tears in my eyes, because like this was why I started doing this, and he just gave it to me. And he's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm good. This was just kind of a moment for me." He's like, I didn't really think about it like that, but yeah, are you all right? I'm like, "Yeah, no, this was wild," because like no one had ever got that story before, and so to get to be the person to share that was a really humbling thing, and it still is. Like, just talking about it, I've got like goosebumps, because I was just a fan of the show, and I happened to ask the right people the right questions. It's really wild that I got to live that.
I mean, honestly, you're living a lot of people's dreams, because, like I said before, you allow people like me, who, once again, I'm just like some little like bald head dude from DC, man. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not anybody, but you created an avenue for me to be known by cast members of the WMAC Masters television show. I've had Carmichael Simon has reached out to me. Yeah. I met Hakeem the Machine Austin. I had dinner with Jamie Webster. I met Lady Lightning. I used to talk to Willie the Bam Johnson on the phone, and that's because of you. So if there's ever a point in time where you feel like you're not doing enough, or that you don't have the results from this book or any project that you've done involved with this, I really want you to remember that you changed my life. You changed my circumstances in a very profound way, because I grew up admiring these people. These are my childhood heroes. You know what I mean? So for you to be able to make that connection and pass that energy along, that positive chi energy along, that means that you're a beacon of light. You know what I mean? And I really think that a lot of us owe you a debt of gratitude. Me, Mel, Smooth, Demetrius Angelo. You know what I mean? Like a lot of us are very much grateful to you and what you've done. So I want to segue into something that might be a little bit self-indulgent, but whatever. I want to talk about how me and you connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can set it off. You can start that part of it because yeah.
Well, it was your video on WMAC Masters. You had the Marshall Masters tape at the end of it, and that wouldn't have been on my radar at all if you hadn't done it. So you're sitting here talking about all the stuff I did, but a huge chunk of the prehistory of the show was preserved by you. So I don't even, at this point, I don't even remember what I first said, but I was like, hey man, I'm doing this thing. Where'd you get that? Like, what was the deal with that?
I remember that was like about 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm gonna be 100% honest. Like I said, when I made the video about WMAC Masters, I made it for myself, to be honest. Like whenever I make video essays or retrospectives, I actually don't really make them for people. I make them for me. That's why they come out so infrequently, and that's why they're so, I guess, detailed, because it's things that I've studied my entire life. And WMAC Masters is a show that I had loved for so very long. And this is a very personal story. I used to watch WMAC Masters with somebody that's like a brother to me. And he was a martial artist, but he kind of fell out of the martial arts and he kind of fell into other things that, and I still love this person to this day. It's my brother, Lil Keith, my brother Keith Artist. If he probably not watching this, but he was a martial artist. He did Taekwondo, and we used to be kids, and we would watch WMAC Masters together, and that was one of the ways that we bonded and connected. We always were close, but WMAC Masters, it brought us together. So when I made that video, it was bringing up all of these memories of my childhood. Like, damn, like me and my bro Lil Keith used to watch the show, and he was like one of like 4 or 5 people that like really watched the show. And even the books that I bought those books for people that are close to me that also watch the series. I bought one for my other brother Terrell, who he probably is watching this. My other brother Daryl Floyd. I bought one from him. I don't know. One for him. I don't know if he read it.
Read it, Daryl.
Please do. And I bought books for somebody I can't recall, but when you reached out to me, I was actually on the verge of quitting YouTube around the time like when I made like the WMAC Master, because I made WMAC Masters and I made another video about the first Ninja Turtles movie, and then my computer died and I couldn't make videos anymore. And I was just like, you know what? Don't nobody really be watching this shit. And then you and a guy I know named Troy Jeffrey Allen, he shared that video in like the Urban Action Expo Facebook group.
Yeah.
And a lot of eyes got on it. And then Herb Perez reached out to me, and like even before you did. And I was like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, what the fuck? And then
like the
I'm like, Herb Perez, like, you know what I mean? And then when you reached out to me and was like, yo, I'm working on a book on WMAC Masters, I don't know if you get like weird DMs from people saying like, yo, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm like, a book on WMAC Masters. And then you were like, where did you find the sales video? Yeah. And it made me think like sales. I'm gonna be honest, like I was kind of like flustered because I'm like, I made the video and I just kind of put it out of my mind and I just started thinking about other stuff. And then when you reached out to me, I was like, a book on WMAC Masters, that would be interesting. I want to see that. And then we just kept connecting from there. And then when you finally released the book, I was just like, yo, he did it. Like he did it. He really did it. He really brought it into existence, because I know a lot of people that want to create. I know a lot of people that say they want to write movies and write books. And I want to write books, actually. Like that's why I make YouTube videos. I want to be a writer. But for you to do that, to actually say, this is what I want to do and bring something into existence, that means that you've achieved a level that not many people can achieve. And I know I keep singing your praises because I want to make sure that you feel appreciated for all that you've done for this community of people that are fans of WMAC Masters, for me, for whoever else is watching this, or for people that are discovering your presence and your book through this video, because this is going to hit a couple thousand views. I'm almost certain. Like, just give it. Yeah, like Omniframe get more views than I advertise, but than I talk about. But yeah,
I would have done my hair if I had known.
I did do my hair in bald, but
I got out of the shower and I rolled onto Skype. I didn't know.
No, you're good. No, like eyes will be on this. Give it a couple months. But yeah, like encountering you, like I said before, has had a very, very, very profound effect on my life as a video editor, creator, writer, person, because your book is motivation for me. To see somebody else that achieved one of their dreams has me like, yo, I'm writing these videos on Jackie Chan and NWA and Ronin Warriors and WMAC Masters, and people are actually seeing them and responding to them positively, and it's creating, connections with people that are also working on their dreams. So it's all positive energy. You know what I'm saying? Like what we're doing, we're putting positive energy out into the world. So I'm always going to give you positive energy and support and an outlet to promote and do your thing. You know what I mean? So like if as OmniFrame grows, I'm going to do my best to make sure that eyes are on you as well. That's my promise to you. Just for you looking out for me, putting me in, positions to meet people and have contacts with people in the entertainment industry. So once again, forever grateful for like meeting you and, building this connection and this friendship with you.
Well, thank you very much. Your support has been from before day one. You were one of the first people to help, and it was very important to me, like I was saying earlier, that guys like you, guys like Mel and Smooth, who were doing the interview thing before I was even started this, like as grateful as I am to, obviously because of the book, I'll be the person at the front of the kind of charge, and I'm cool with that because I'm very proud of what we did, but I refuse the idea that I was solely responsible or the only one, because Mel and Smooth had so many great interviews with the cast that I used for the book. You did that great retrospective that you put all that together. You rescued that Richard Brandon, that Richard Brandon video that had a sales tape. You preserved that. So, as proud as I am, and I'm becoming more okay with taking the compliments. It's not natural for me, but I always want to make sure that new people who are coming in know that it wasn't just me. It wasn't just, my team. It wasn't, it was a lot of people, and it was a community. And I'm very happy to have been able to facilitate kind of bringing different aspects of that community together. I'm excited to keep trying to do that, because of my kids being the ages they are. I haven't been able to do as much as I want as far as traveling and trying to do events and stuff, but that's something that's still very much on the plate, and something I want to do next spring, late winter, early spring next year. There's going to be an event in Florida that he and Gwen's going to be at, and I'm going to be at, and we're going to try to get one or two more masters in to try to do something in Florida. So, keep your eyes peeled for that. There's a lot of people who I think would enjoy the book if they knew it existed, and it's just a matter of getting people out in front of that. But more than that, I think there are a lot of people who would enjoy connecting with the people who are already in this community, because I've seen friendships bud. I mean, we have a mutual friend, Tristan, who we met through Twitter and the Patreon that was up at the time, and now Facebook. Like, Johnny, who was with us in DC. There's this whole little subculture almost of people who they have this central interest, shared interest of WMAC Masters, and it kind of spokes out into all these different things. And I think that's really amazing, because we wouldn't have found each other. And so when you say things like bringing people together, I lose sight of that sometimes because of the writer brain. I don't think of the bigger picture. So I appreciate you keeping me down to earth on that.
Oh no, it's related. Once again, I run a YouTube channel that is respectable, but not as big as it should be. You know what I mean? So
right.
I deal with that too. Like people come
not as big as you want it.
Yeah, like people come to me like, "Yo, man, your video on such and such opened my eyes," or something. Like, you saw that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I deal with the same thing too. So because we're in the same community and we're doing like very similar things, we have that similar type of self-deprecating personality.
Yeah.
And that might just be something with people that like to write, you know what I mean? So it's important that we constantly uplift each other and make sure that we're reinforcing each other's purpose, because at the end of the day, you know, we all that we got, man. You know what I mean? Community is really the foundation of success. You can't build a house of success with one person and one stick. I just made that up. But yeah.
Sounded good. I would have bought it as an old saying.
So we've been ranting on for an hour, so we can wrap it up here, because I actually want to do a part 2 with you. I know you got stuff to do, so I want to give people an opportunity to find you. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Sure. So it's at WMAC Masters Book on Twitter, or X if you're one of those people who calls it X. I'm old. It's Twitter. Also at Quest for the Dragon Star on Facebook. I think the URL for the website finally died. I'm sorry. I'm having to Google my own website at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, the website's dead. So the book is available on Amazon. If you search Quest for the Dragon Star, An Oral History of WMAC Masters, or just WMAC Masters on Amazon, you'll find it. You'll find it there. My website's krislandis.com. That's not like remotely up to date, but yeah, that's where you can find us. I'm always happy to answer any questions people have about the book, the show, anything like that. So it's always cool to meet new fans.
Yeah, man. So
of the show, not of me. I don't expect people to be fans of me. That's not what I was saying.
No, you definitely have a fan base. Like you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we gonna keep it a buck, man. But this was wonderful. This is a great podcast episode, man. I look forward to doing a part 2 and a part 3, and you know, I look forward to us, like, you know, doing things in the future, man. Like, if I ever do another WMAC Masters video, which I probably won't.
Well, I was gonna say earlier, I think as a fan of yours, I would like you to do a second version of the video, having the book now as a resource, because I want to see how your thoughts or opinions or anything might have changed or evolved. So I don't want to hear you say you probably won't, because I would like that to still be on your radar.
That actually, yeah, you put a seed in my head. I actually try not to do I try not to do videos on the same topic, because I don't want people to box me in, because what people are trying to do with me now, they're trying to make me like the martial arts guy. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I want to be like the pop culture guy. You know what I mean? I want to be able to talk about anything, because martial arts is not the total sum. And not, as a writer, I'm quite sure you relate to that too. You don't want to be a genre.
Yeah.
You want to be a writer. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be like with WMAC Masters, the book. You don't want that to be the sole thing that people come to you for. You want it to be a part of your body of work. You know what I mean? Because body got arm, leg. You know what I mean? So yeah. So
we'll talk about this off air. I got some ideas for angles that might be interesting to you. We'll talk about this off air.
we can definitely talk about that. But we're gonna wrap it up here, man. We're signing off. So once again, I am Cytonius, the opposite of the Cytonius, with the legendary Kris Landis, author of the book
Quest for the Dragon Star, Oral History of WMAC Masters.
Please buy the book. It's a great book. Honestly, one of the best books I've ever read on a TV show. So yeah, and we're out. Peace.